Amara's dream. The morning sun filtered through the blinds of a modest one-bedroom apartment where Amara lived with her grandmother, Clara. The scent of freshly baked muffins wafted through the air, mingling with the soft hum of Clara's favorite gospel station playing on the old radio. It was a Saturday, the day Amara had been preparing for all week. Her bake sale wasn't just about selling cookies and cakes. It was her way of helping her grandmother, who had been struggling with medical bills after her arthritis worsened. Amara, barely 12 years old, was a spirited girl with a passion for baking. Her late mother, Clara's daughter, had taught her the basics of baking before she passed in a tragic car accident years ago. Since then, baking had become Amara's way of connecting with her mother's memory. "Grandma," Amara called from the small kitchen, her voice filled with excitement. "I think the muffins turned out perfect this time. They're fluffy and golden, just like you said they should be." Clara shuffled into the kitchen, leaning heavily on her cane. Despite her frailty, her eyes sparkled with pride. "You've outdone yourself, sweetie," she said, resting a hand on Amara's shoulder. "Your mom would be so proud of you." Amara grinned, her chest swelling with pride. "I'm going to sell out today. I just know it." The two of them worked together to load trays of cookies, muffins, and cupcakes onto a foldable cart. Amara had drawn a colorful banner the night before that read, "Sweet treats for a cause, baked with love." She had used every crayon in her box to make it bright and inviting. As they made their way to the park nearby, Clara carried the banner while Amara pulled the cart. The walk was slow, Clara needing to pause every few steps to catch her breath. Amara glanced at her grandmother's pale face, worry flickering in her eyes. She knew how much Clara struggled with her health, which only made her more determined to succeed. "Don't push yourself too hard, Grandma," Amara said, stopping the cart to give Clara a moment to rest. Clara waved a hand dismissively. "Don't you worry about me. We've got muffins to sell, don't we?" They arrived at the park and found a shaded spot near the children's playground. Amara set up the table with precision, arranging the baked goods in neat rows and securing the banner to the front of the table. Clara sat in a folding chair nearby, offering a supportive smile. By mid-morning, the bake sale was in full swing. Neighbors and park visitors stopped by to buy treats, many of them leaving extra money in the jar when they learned it was for Clara's medical bills. Amara's charm and enthusiasm were contagious, and people couldn't resist her baked goods. "Best cookies I've had in years," exclaimed Mr. Whittaker, a retired teacher who lived down the block. He handed Amara a $20 bill. "Keep the change." Amara beamed. "Thank you so much, Mr. Whittaker. Come back anytime for more." As the sun climbed higher, Amara and Clara took a moment to enjoy their success. They had already raised nearly $100, more than Amara had hoped for in just a few hours. Clara reached for Amara's hand, her grip weak but full of warmth. "You're amazing, sweetheart," Clara said softly. "I couldn't ask for a better granddaughter." Amara blushed. "I'm just doing what needs to be done, Grandma." But their peaceful morning was about to take a turn. The sound of a police car pulling up to the curb broke the idyllic scene. Two officers, one of them tall and broad-shouldered with a stern expression, stepped out of the vehicle. The lead officer, whose name tag read Bradley, approached the table with an air of authority. Amara's smile faded as she watched them approach. "Grandma, why are the police here?" Clara sat up straighter, her frail body tense. "I don't know, baby. Just stay close to me." Officer Bradley stopped in front of the table, his gaze sweeping over the baked goods and the banner. He frowned, his expression hardening. "Afternoon," he said gruffly. "We've received complaints about an unauthorized business operating here. Do you have a permit for this bake sale?" Clara frowned, her calm demeanor masking her unease. "Officer, this isn't a business. It's just a small bake sale to help with medical expenses. We're not hurting anyone." Bradley crossed his arms. "Rules are rules, ma'am. Without a permit, you can't set up shop here. Pack it up." Amara's eyes widened in disbelief. But we're just selling cookies. We're not doing anything wrong. Bradley's stern gaze shifted to Amara. Step aside, kid. This isn't up for debate. Clara struggled to her feet, her voice steady but tinged with anger. She's just a child. There's no need for this. Bradley ignored her, gesturing to his partner. Confiscate the money and shut it down. No, Amara cried, stepping in front of the table to block the officer. You can't take our money. We worked hard for this. Bradley's patience snapped. He grabbed Amara by the arm, pulling her away from the table. Clara moved to intervene, but the effort was too much for her frail body. She stumbled and fell, her cane clattering to the ground. Grandma! Amara screamed, wrenching herself free to kneel beside Clara. Tears streamed down her face as she clutched her grandmother's hand. Are you okay? Please say something. Clara groaned, pain etched across her face. I'm fine, baby. Don't cry. The commotion had drawn the attention of passers-by. Neighbors began to gather, their expressions a mix of shock and anger. Some pulled out their phones, recording the scene as Bradley's partner dumped the baked goods onto the ground and seized the money jar. This is outrageous, shouted an elderly woman. They're just trying to raise money for her medical bills. Bradley glared at the crowd. Move along. This doesn't concern you. But the murmurs of disapproval grew louder. People were outraged at the officer's heavy-handed approach. Amara knelt beside Clara, her young face twisted with anguish. We won't give up, Grandma, she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. I promise. As the police car drove away, leaving behind a mess of broken cookies and shattered hope, Amara's resolve hardened. She wouldn't let this injustice stand, not for her grandmother, and not for anyone else. This was just the beginning of their fight for justice. The black SUV. The neighborhood was abuzz with whispers and murmurs of disbelief after the incident at the park. Video recordings of Officer Bradley's harsh treatment of Amara and her grandmother Clara began circulating online, shared by neighbors outraged at the injustice. However, amidst the chaos and heartbreak, Amara and Clara found themselves back home, trying to piece together what was left of their bake sale. The dining table in their small apartment was cluttered with trays of broken cookies, crushed muffins, and the banner that Amara had painstakingly crafted. Clara sat in her favorite armchair, her cane resting beside her, as she rubbed her bruised wrist with a wince. Grandma, Amara said softly, sitting on the floor by Clara's feet, I'm sorry. I should have done more. I shouldn't have let them. Clara shook her head, her voice firm despite her fatigue. You have nothing to apologize for, Amara. You stood up for what was right, and that's more than most people would do. I'm so proud of you. Amara looked down, her hands balled into fists. But we lost everything. The money, the food, everything's gone. Before Clara could respond, the sound of a car pulling up outside caught their attention. Amara stood and peeked through the thin curtains. Her eyes widened as she saw a sleek black SUV parked in front of their building. Its tinted windows glimmered in the sunlight, and the vehicle seemed out of place in their modest neighborhood. Grandma, there's a fancy car outside, Amara said, her voice filled with curiosity and caution. Clara frowned. Stay here, sweetie. Let me see who it is. Amara watched as her grandmother used her cane to steady herself and moved toward the door. Before Clara could open it, there was a firm knock. Amara held her breath, her heart pounding. Clara opened the door slowly, revealing a tall, elegant woman dressed in a navy blue pantsuit. Her heels clicked softly against the concrete as she stepped forward, her expression warm but serious. Her skin was a deep mocha, her hair styled in a sleek bun, and she carried herself with an air of authority that was impossible to ignore. Good afternoon, the woman said, her voice smooth and calm. My name is Selena Brooks. May I come in? I believe we have something important to discuss. Clara hesitated, glancing at Amara, who had moved to stand beside her. Something about Selena's demeanor felt reassuring, and after a brief pause, Clara stepped aside. "Please, come in." Selena entered, her eyes quickly scanning the small apartment. Her gaze lingered on the broken baked goods and the crumpled banner on the table. She turned back to Clara and Amara, her expression softening. "I saw the video," Selena said gently, taking a seat at the small kitchen table. "What happened to you two was unacceptable. I came here to see how I can help." Amara's eyes widened. "You saw it?" "The video. Everyone saw it." Selena nodded. "It's all over social media. People are outraged. But outrage isn't enough. We need action." Clara lowered herself into the chair opposite Selena, her weariness evident. "Ms. Brooks, I appreciate your concern, but we're just trying to get by. We don't want any trouble." Selena leaned forward, her tone firm but kind. "This isn't about trouble, Mrs. Edwards. This is about justice. What those officers did was wrong, and they need to be held accountable. More than that, we need to make sure this doesn't happen to anyone else." Clara exchanged a glance with Amara, who was staring at Selena with a mix of awe and hope. Finally, Clara nodded. "What do you have in mind?" Selena smiled, her confidence radiating. "First, we're going to get you the medical care you need. I've already spoken to a doctor who's willing to see you free of charge. Second, we're going to organize another bake sale, bigger and better than before. And this time, no one will shut you down." Amara's face lit up. "Really? You mean it?" Selena nodded. "Absolutely. But we're not stopping there. We're going to make sure your story is heard. This isn't just about raising money. It's about making a statement." Clara hesitated. "That all sounds wonderful. But who are you, Ms. Brooks? Why are you doing this for us?" Selena's expression softened. "I'm someone who knows what it's like to fight against a system that's stacked against you. My mother raised me on her own, and we struggled every day. But I had people who believed in me and helped me when I needed it most. Now that I'm in a position to help others, I make it my mission to do so." Clara studied Selena for a moment before nodding slowly. "Well, you're certainly determined. We'd be grateful for any help you can give." Selena stood, her energy infectious. "Good. Now, let's get started." The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. Selena arranged for Clara to see a doctor, who confirmed that while her injuries from the incident weren't severe, her overall health required immediate attention. Selena also reached out to her network of contacts, securing permits for a new bake sale and rallying support from local businesses. Meanwhile, Amara threw herself into baking with renewed determination. Selena visited daily, bringing supplies and teaching Amara the basics of marketing and budgeting. "Your banner last time was great," Selena said, holding up a new one that read, "Fresh bakes, warm hearts, supporting Grandma Clara. But this one will really catch people's attention." Amara beamed, her confidence growing with each passing day. On the morning of the bake sale, the atmosphere was electric. Selena had arranged for it to take place in the community center's parking lot, ensuring plenty of foot traffic. Tables were set up in neat rows, adorned with colorful tablecloths and trays of delicious treats. Amara's banner hung proudly above the setup. As the first customers arrived, Amara greeted them with a wide smile. "Good morning. Would you like to try our chocolate chip cookies? They're Grandma's recipe." The bake sale quickly became a neighborhood event. Families came in droves, eager to support Clara and Amara. Local musicians played live music, creating a festive atmosphere, and volunteers helped manage the crowd. Amara's hard work paid off. By the end of the day, the bake sale had raised over $2,000. Clara, seated comfortably in a chair at the side, watched with tears in her eyes as her granddaughter thrived. "You did it, sweetheart," Clara said as Amara hugged her tightly. "You really did it." Selena, standing nearby, smiled. "This is just the beginning. We're going to keep fighting until you get everything you deserve." But as the sun set on their triumphant day, Selena's phone buzzed with a notification. Her smile faded as she read the message. Officer Bradley had been placed on administrative leave, but no formal charges had been filed. The fight for justice was far from over. A call for justice. The glow of the successful bake sale hadn't entirely faded, but the notification about Officer Bradley's administrative leave weighed heavily on Selina's mind. She knew it was a small victory, symbolic at best, but far from the accountability Clara and Amara deserved. Selina sat at the kitchen table in Clara's modest home, flipping through her notebook filled with meticulous notes. She'd outlined every step of the legal process, names of witnesses, and contact information for advocacy groups. Across from her, Clara and Amara sat, their faces tired but determined. "I need you both to understand something," Selina began, her voice steady. "This isn't going to be quick, and it's not going to be easy. Police misconduct cases rarely are, but I promise you, we're going to fight this. Together." Clara sighed, her frail hand resting atop Amara's. "Ms. Brooks, you've already done so much for us. I don't know how we'll ever repay you." "You don't owe me anything," Selina replied firmly. "What happened to you was an injustice, and the system needs to be held accountable. It's not just about you. It's about making sure this doesn't happen to anyone else." Amara spoke up, her voice trembling but resolute. "What do we need to do?" Selina smiled at the girl's courage. "First, we gather evidence. I've already reached out to the neighbors who recorded the incident. Some of them are willing to give statements. Second, we use this momentum to raise awareness. Your story is already circulating online, but we need to make sure it doesn't lose steam." Clara nodded, though her expression was tinged with doubt. "And after that?" Selina's eyes sharpened. "After that, we demand action. If the local authorities won't hold Bradley accountable, we'll escalate this to the state level. I know people who can help." The following morning, Selina invited a small group of neighbors to Clara's home. Among them were Mr. Whitaker, Mrs. Green, and Mr. Peddle, the same people who had come to their defense at the park. Each of them had seen the injustice firsthand, and they were eager to help. "Thank you all for coming," Selina began, standing at the head of the room. "We're here because what happened to Clara and Amara wasn't just wrong. It was an abuse of power. Together, we have the ability to make sure this doesn't get swept under the rug." Mrs. Green raised her hand. "What can we do? Tell us how we can help." Selina nodded. "First, I need your video footage and statements. The more evidence we have, the stronger our case will be. Second, we're going to organize a community rally. We need to show the city that we won't stay silent." Amara's eyes widened. "A rally? Like with signs and everything?" Selina chuckled. "Exactly. But it's not just about shouting. We'll invite speakers, local leaders, and anyone who supports justice. This is about making noise in the right way." Over the next week, the community rallied around Clara and Amara. Social media became a powerful tool, with the hashtag Justice for Clara and Amara trending locally. Volunteers helped create flyers, signs, and banners for the rally, while others reached out to local news outlets to cover the story. Amara, for her part, threw herself into the preparations. She helped design signs that read "No more abuse of power" and "Justice for all." Despite her young age, she had a way of inspiring others with her passion and determination. The day of the rally arrived, and the city park was transformed into a hub of activity. A stage had been set up with microphones and speakers, and hundreds of people had gathered, holding signs and chanting slogans. Among the crowd were parents, children, and even local activists who had heard about the incident. Selina stood at the side of the stage, reviewing her notes. She wore a simple black blazer, her expression focused. Amara stood beside her, clutching the handwritten speech. Clara sat in a wheelchair nearby, her face filled with pride and a touch of nervousness. "You ready, Amara?" Selina asked, crouching to meet the girl's gaze. Amara nodded, though her hands trembled slightly. "I think so." Selina placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You're going to be amazing. Just speak from your heart." As the crowd quieted, Selina stepped onto the stage. She adjusted the microphone and took a deep breath. "Good afternoon, she began, her voice echoing across the park. "We're here today because an injustice was done to a family in our community. Clara Edwards and her granddaughter, Amara, were treated with cruelty and disrespect by the very people who are supposed to protect us. But they are not victims. They are fighters. And today, we stand with them." The crowd erupted into applause, and Selena stepped aside, gesturing for Amara to join her. The young girl hesitated for a moment before walking to the microphone, her small frame dwarfed by the large stage. "My name is Amara," she began, her voice shaky but growing stronger. "I'm 12 years old, and I love to bake. My grandma and I started a bake sale to help pay for her medical bills because she's the most important person in my life. But instead of being able to help her, we were hurt." Amara paused, her eyes scanning the crowd. "The police took our money, destroyed our table, and pushed my grandma to the ground. They didn't care that we weren't doing anything wrong. They didn't care about us." A hush fell over the crowd as Amara continued. "But we're not giving up. My grandma always says that when life gets hard, you have to stand tall and keep going. So that's what we're doing. We're standing tall. And we're asking for justice, not just for us, but for everyone who's ever been hurt by people in power." The applause was deafening. Selena stepped forward, wrapping an arm around Amara as the crowd chanted her name. "Amara. Amara." As the rally concluded, Selena received a call from one of her contacts at a local news station. The rally had garnered significant attention, and the station wanted to air an exclusive interview with Clara and Amara. "That's good news," Selena told Clara later that evening. "The more visibility we have, the harder it'll be for them to ignore us." Clara nodded, her expression weary but hopeful. "You're doing so much for us, Selena. I don't know how we'll ever repay you." "You repay me by continuing to fight," Selena said with a smile. "This is just the beginning." But as Selena left Clara's home that night, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were up against something much larger. The fight for justice was gaining momentum, but the system they were challenging wouldn't go down without a fight. Selena tightened her resolve. They had come too far to turn back now. This wasn't just about Clara and Amara anymore. It was about changing the narrative for everyone. A reckoning begins. The following days brought a mix of hope and tension for Clara, Amara, and Selena. The rally had been a tremendous success, drawing attention from local news stations and even some state-level advocacy groups. Videos of Amara's heartfelt speech continued to circulate online, garnering thousands of views and comments from people outraged by the injustice. The hashtag Justice for Clara and Amara trended across social media, and the community's support seemed stronger than ever. But the pressure also brought new challenges. Officer Bradley and his precinct were no longer ignoring the situation. Statements from Bradley defending his actions appeared in the local newspaper, claiming he had been following protocol. The police department issued a vague announcement about an internal investigation, but no further action was taken. For Selena, this wasn't just frustrating, it was infuriating. One morning, as Clara and Amara sat at the kitchen table eating breakfast, Selena arrived with a stack of papers and a determined expression. She dropped the pile onto the table and took a seat, looking at both of them. "What's all this?" Clara asked, adjusting her reading glasses as she peered at the stack. "This," Selena said, tapping the papers, "is every legal and bureaucratic tool we're going to use to make them take responsibility. I've drafted a formal complaint to the Police Oversight Board, a letter to the mayor, and a petition for a public hearing. We're turning up the heat." Amara's eyes lit up. "A public hearing? Like in court?" "Not quite," Selena replied with a small smile. "It's more like a meeting where city officials have to listen to us and the community. It's not a trial, but it's a chance to make them hear our voices and take action." Clara nodded slowly. "You're putting a lot of work into this, Selena. Are you sure it'll make a difference?" Selena leaned forward, her gaze steady. "I'm not just sure. It has to. They want us to give up, but we're not going to. And we're not alone. The community is behind us, and the media attention is forcing them to pay attention. That same afternoon, Selena met with her legal contacts at a local nonprofit organization dedicated to fighting police misconduct. The office was modest, but bustling with activity, filled with lawyers and paralegals poring over cases. "Selena," said Marcus Lee, the lead attorney and one of Selena's oldest friends. He greeted her with a firm handshake and a warm smile. "I heard about Clara and Amara's case. It's heartbreaking." "It is," Selena agreed, her tone serious. "That's why I need your help. We need to build a strong case, not just for public accountability, but to push for policy changes in how this city handles community policing." Marcus nodded. "I'm in. Let's start by gathering everything we can. Video evidence, witness statements, and any past complaints against Officer Bradley and his team. If this isn't his first incident, it'll strengthen our argument." Selena handed Marcus a folder containing the information she'd already collected. "Here's what we've got so far. The community's rallied around Clara and Amara, but we need to make sure their story doesn't get buried in bureaucratic red tape. We'll dig deep," Marcus promised, "but you need to prepare them. Cases like this can drag on, and the other side will fight back hard." Selena's jaw tightened. "I know, but I'll make sure they're ready." Back at Clara's house, the fight was beginning to take its toll. Clara's health had been fragile to begin with, and the stress of the situation was wearing her down. Amara noticed how her grandmother seemed more tired than usual, her movements slower, and her breathing more labored. "Grandma, are you okay?" Amara asked one evening as she helped Clara to bed. Clara gave her a weak smile. "I'm fine, sweetie. Just tired." Amara frowned but didn't push. Instead, she resolved to do everything she could to help, even if it meant taking on more responsibility than a 12-year-old should. The next day, while Selena was out meeting with Marcus, Amara decided to take matters into her own hands. She pulled out a notebook and began drafting a letter, addressed to the mayor, the city council, and anyone else she thought might listen. "Dear Mayor and City Council members, my name is Amara Edwards, and I'm 12 years old. I live with my grandma, Clara, who's the most amazing person I know. She's been taking care of me since my parents passed away, and I wanted to help her when she got sick. That's why we started our bake sale, to pay for her hospital bills. But instead of being able to help her, we were hurt. The police came and took everything from us. They pushed my grandma and made her fall. They didn't care that we weren't doing anything wrong. I'm writing to ask for your help. What happened to us was unfair, and I don't want it to happen to anyone else. My grandma always says that standing up for what's right is the most important thing you can do. That's what I'm trying to do now. Please help us make things right. Sincerely, Amara Edwards." Amara showed the letter to Clara and Selena that evening. Selena read it aloud, her voice filled with emotion. By the time she finished, Clara's eyes were glistening with tears. "Amara, that's beautiful," Clara said, her voice trembling. "You're so brave." Selena nodded, her pride evident. "This letter is perfect, Amara. We'll send copies to every city official we can think of, and I'll make sure it gets published online too." A few days later, Amara's letter went viral. Shared across social media and featured in local news segments, it struck a chord with people far beyond their community. Celebrities and activists began tweeting their support, and donations poured in to help cover Clara's medical expenses. But the most significant response came from the mayor's office. Selena received a phone call from the mayor's chief of staff requesting a meeting. "This is it," Selena said as she hung up the phone. "They're feeling the pressure. They can't ignore us anymore." The meeting was scheduled for the following week. Selena spent hours preparing Clara and Amara, walking them through what to expect and how to present their case. The night before the meeting, Amara sat on the couch, clutching a picture of her parents. "Do you think they'd be proud of me?" she asked softly. Clara placed a hand on Amara's shoulder, her voice filled with love. "They'd be more than proud, sweetheart. They'd be amazed by how strong and courageous you are." Selena smiled from across the room. "Your parents would be bursting with pride, Amara. You're doing something incredible, not just for your grandma, but for so many others who've been hurt like you." As they prepared for bed, a sense of quiet determination settled over the house. Tomorrow would be a turning point, not just for Clara and Amara, but for their entire community. The fight was far from over, but they were ready to face whatever came next. The meeting that changed everything. The day of the meeting with the mayor arrived, and the tension in Clara's small apartment was palpable. Amara stood in front of the bathroom mirror, carefully adjusting the small clip in her hair. She picked out her best dress, a simple navy blue one her grandmother had bought her for school events. Clara, seated on the edge of her bed, wore a soft lavender blouse, her posture as straight as her frail body would allow. Selena arrived early, her usual polished demeanor even sharper than usual. She carried a leather portfolio filled with documents, witness statements, and a printout of Amara's viral letter. Her tailored gray blazer gave her an air of authority that demanded attention. "You both look perfect," Selena said as she entered, her eyes scanning Clara and Amara with approval. "Are you ready for this?" Clara nodded slowly. "As ready as we'll ever be. But I'm still nervous. What if they don't listen?" "They'll listen," Selena assured her, her voice firm. "We've done everything right. We've gathered evidence, rallied support, and turned this into a story they can't ignore. Now it's their turn to act." Amara clutched a small notebook to her chest. She had written down what she wanted to say, but the weight of the day made her hands tremble. "What if I mess up?" she asked quietly. Selena knelt to meet her gaze. "You won't mess up, Amara. Just speak from your heart, like you did at the rally. That's your greatest strength, your honesty and courage. Remember, you're not alone. We're all here with you." Amara nodded, drawing strength from Selena's words. "Okay, I'll do my best." The mayor's office was housed in an imposing building downtown, its marble floors and towering columns radiating authority. As they entered, Selena led the way, her heels clicking confidently against the polished floor. Clara held onto Amara's hand tightly, her cane steadying her as they walked. The mayor's chief of staff, a young man with sharp features and a practiced smile, greeted them in the lobby. "Ms. Brooks, Mrs. Edwards, Amara," he said, nodding at each of them in turn. "The mayor is expecting you. Please follow me." They were led into a spacious conference room, where the mayor sat at the head of a long table. Mayor Richardson was a middle-aged man with salt and pepper hair and a reputation for being a pragmatic leader. He rose as they entered, extending a hand to each of them. "Thank you for coming," he said, his tone warm but measured. "I've been following your case closely, and I want to hear your story directly from you." Selena wasted no time. She began with a succinct summary of the events at the bake sale, presenting the evidence she had meticulously gathered. She handed over printed photos, video stills, and statements from neighbors who had witnessed the incident. "This isn't just about what happened to Clara and Amara," Selena said, her voice steady and strong. "This is about systemic issues within our police department. Officer Bradley's actions were not only excessive, they were a blatant abuse of power. We need accountability, and we need change." The mayor listened intently, his hands folded on the table. When Selena finished, he turned to Clara. "Mrs. Edwards, I can't imagine how difficult this has been for you. Please, tell me in your own words how this has affected your family." Clara took a deep breath, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "My granddaughter and I have been trying to get by since my daughter, her mother, passed away. I've done everything I can to take care of her, but my health has made it harder every year. That bake sale was our way of fighting back, of trying to stay afloat. When the police came, they didn't just take our money. They took our dignity." Amara tightened her grip on her notebook, her eyes welling with tears. The mayor's gaze shifted to her, his expression softening. "Amara, would you like to say something?" Amara nodded, her voice shaking as she spoke. My grandma is my hero. She's done everything for me, and I just wanted to help her. But instead, we were treated like criminals. I don't understand why they were so mean to us. We weren't doing anything wrong. All I want is for people to be treated fairly, no matter who they are. Her words hung in the air, and for a moment, the room was silent. Then the mayor leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. Thank you for sharing your story, he said. I won't pretend that I can fix this overnight, but I can promise you this. There will be a full investigation into Officer Bradley's actions, and I will personally oversee it. Additionally, I will work with the City Council to review our policies on community policing and ensure that incidents like this don't happen again. Selena's eyes narrowed slightly. With respect, Mr. Mayor, promises are a good start, but we need tangible action. We need timelines, transparency, and accountability. The mayor nodded, a flicker of respect crossing his face. You're absolutely right. I'll have my office draft a formal statement within 48 hours outlining our next steps, and I'd like to invite you all to be part of the advisory committee we're forming to address these issues. Clara and Amara exchanged a glance, a mix of relief and disbelief on their faces. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Clara said softly. That means a lot. As they left the building, the weight of the meeting began to lift. Outside, a small crowd of supporters had gathered, holding signs and cheering as Clara, Amara, and Selena emerged. Reporters swarmed them, shouting questions, but Selena guided Clara and Amara through the crowd with practiced ease. Amara looked up at Selena as they reached the car. Do you think he really meant what he said? Selena smiled, her confidence unwavering. I do. But even if he didn't, we'll make sure he follows through. This is just the beginning, Amara. The fight's not over, but we're winning. Clara placed a hand on Selena's arm. I don't know what we would have done without you. You've given us hope again. Selena shook her head. You've always had hope, Clara. I just helped you find it. As they drove home, the city skyline gleaming in the distance, a sense of triumph filled the car. They had taken a step toward justice, and for the first time in a long time, it felt like the tide was turning in their favor. As they drove through the bustling streets of the city, Amara gazed out of the window, her thoughts swirling with a mix of relief and determination. The mayor's words had planted a seed of hope in her young heart, but she couldn't help wondering if promises alone would be enough to bring about real change. Selena noticed Amara's quiet demeanor and glanced at her through the rearview mirror. What's on your mind, Amara? She asked gently. Amara hesitated before replying, her voice soft. It's just, what if they forget about us? What if they don't actually do anything? Selena's grip on the steering wheel tightened slightly. She had seen too many cases where well-meaning promises dissolved under the weight of bureaucracy. But she wasn't about to let that happen here. They won't forget, Selena said firmly, because we won't let them. This fight isn't just about what happened to you and your grandma. It's about making sure no one else has to go through the same thing. And we have the power to hold them accountable. Clara, seated beside Amara, reached out to squeeze her granddaughter's hand. Selena's right, baby. You've already done so much by sharing your story. The world is paying attention now. Amara nodded, her resolve hardening. I just want to make sure no one else gets hurt like we did. Back at Clara's home, the momentum of the day didn't slow down. Selena's phone buzzed constantly with calls and messages from reporters, community leaders, and even strangers offering support. She sat at the kitchen table, jotting down notes and strategizing for the next steps. Amara joined her, sitting across the table with her notebook. What can I do to help? She asked. Selena looked up, her eyes softening. You've already done so much, Amara. But if you're ready, there's one more thing I think you could do. Amara straightened in her chair, eager to contribute. What is it? Selena slid a piece of paper across the table. I want you to write a letter to the City Council. Tell them why this fight matters to you, why they need to act. Your voice has already made such an impact, and I think it could inspire them to take real action. Amara's eyes widened, but she nodded. Okay, I'll do it. As Amara began drafting her letter, Selena turned her attention back to her phone. She scrolled through messages, her eyes scanning for anything that could give them an edge. One message caught her attention, a reply from a prominent civil rights lawyer she had reached out to earlier in the week. Selena, I've seen the footage and heard about the case. I'm in. Let's talk strategy. Alexis Carter. Selena's lips curved into a smile. Alexis Carter was not just any lawyer. She was a powerhouse known for taking on high-profile cases and winning. Selena immediately dialed the number. Alexis, thank you for getting back to me, Selena said when the lawyer picked up. Of course, Alexis replied, her voice sharp and confident. What Officer Bradley did is unacceptable, and it's a clear-cut case of excessive force and abuse of power. I want to help you bring this to court. Selena's heart raced. That's exactly what we need. Can you meet us tomorrow to discuss the next steps? Absolutely. Let's make this big, Alexis said. I'll bring my team. After hanging up, Selena looked at Clara and Amara, who were now sitting side by side on the couch. Good news, she said, her voice filled with excitement. We're getting a lawyer, a great one. She's going to help us take this fight to the next level. Clara's eyes widened. A lawyer? Selena, you've already done so much. I don't know how we can afford someone like that. Don't worry about that, Selena said, shaking her head. Alexis Carter works with organizations that handle cases like this pro bono. She's doing this because it's the right thing to do. Amara's face lit up with hope. Does this mean we're going to court? Selena nodded. It might. But first, we'll see what happens with the investigation. Either way, we're not stopping. The next day, Alexis Carter arrived at Clara's home with 2 members of her legal team. She was a tall, commanding woman with a sharp mind and a passion for justice. She wasted no time diving into the details of the case, listening intently as Selena recounted everything that had happened. This is a strong case, Alexis said after reviewing the evidence. The video footage is damning, and the community support is a huge advantage. But we need to be prepared for the police department to push back. They'll try to protect their own. Selena nodded. What's our best course of action? For now, we wait for the results of the internal investigation, Alexis said. If it's handled properly, we might not need to go to court. But if they try to sweep this under the rug, we'll file a civil lawsuit. We'll also push for policy changes to ensure this doesn't happen again. Clara looked worried. A lawsuit? Won't that take a long time? It could, Alexis admitted. But it's worth it. This isn't just about getting justice for you. It's about setting a precedent. Amara, who had been quiet, suddenly spoke up. What if the mayor keeps his promise? Will that be enough? Alexis smiled at the girl's earnestness. If the mayor keeps his promise and we see real change, that's a win. But we have to be ready for anything. As the meeting ended, Selena felt a renewed sense of purpose. They had come so far, and now they had the backing of one of the best legal minds in the country. But she knew the road ahead would still be challenging. That evening, as the sun set over the neighborhood, Clara, Amara, and Selena sat together on the porch, watching the sky turn shades of pink and orange. For the first time in weeks, there was a sense of calm. You've been so strong through all of this, Selena said, looking at Amara. You remind me why I started doing this work in the first place. Amara looked up at her, her eyes shining. Because you want to help people. Selena nodded. Because I believe in standing up for what's right. And you've shown me that even the smallest voices can make the biggest impact. As they sat in the fading light, the weight of the day began to lift. They didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but they knew they would face it together. And for the first time in a long time, hope felt like more than just a word. It felt like a promise. A new dawn. The weeks that followed the meeting with the mayor were a whirlwind of activity, legal preparations, and public attention. The city had promised a swift investigation, but days turned into weeks with no clear updates. Meanwhile, Selena, Clara, and Amara worked tirelessly with Alexis Carter and her legal team to ensure they were prepared for any outcome. Amara became a household name in the community. Her heartfelt speech at the rally and the letter she had written to the city council continued to inspire people. Donations kept pouring in to support Clara's medical bills, and local businesses began offering their help. But Amara wasn't content to rest on the community's generosity. She insisted on continuing her bake sales, determined to do her part. One crisp morning, Amara and Selena were setting up for another bake sale in front of the community center. This time, the event was much larger, with tables stretching across the parking lot and a line of customers forming before they had even finished arranging the treats. The banner overhead read, "Justice Bakes, fighting for fairness, one cookie at a time." "You're becoming a bit of a celebrity," Selena teased as she watched Amara expertly handle the growing crowd. Amara grinned, handing a bag of chocolate chip cookies to a young boy. "Maybe, but I'm still just me. Besides, it's not about being famous, it's about helping Grandma." Clara, seated under a tent nearby, watched the scene with pride. Though her health remained fragile, the support from the community and the hope sparked by their fight seemed to give her a renewed sense of strength. That afternoon, as the bake sale wound down, Selena received a call from Alexis. Stepping away from the crowd, she answered, her heart racing. "Alexis, any news?" "Yes," Alexis replied, her voice brisk. "The internal investigation is complete, and they're calling a press conference tomorrow to announce the findings. I think we've put enough pressure on them that they'll take this seriously." Selena let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. "That's good to hear, but what about Officer Bradley? Will there be any real consequences?" "We'll find out tomorrow," Alexis said. "But I also prepared our lawsuit. If they try to downplay this, we'll be ready to escalate." Selena thanked her and hung up, turning to share the news with Clara and Amara. "Tomorrow's a big day," Selena said, crouching beside Clara's chair. "The city is announcing the results of the investigation." Clara's expression was a mix of hope and apprehension. "Do you think they'll do the right thing?" "They don't have much choice," Selena said, "not with the world watching." The next day, the city hall was packed with reporters, community members, and supporters of Clara and Amara. The atmosphere was tense as everyone waited for the mayor and the police chief to take the podium. Selena, Clara, and Amara sat in the front row, flanked by Alexis and her team. When Mayor Richardson stepped up to the microphone, the room fell silent. His face was grave, and his tone measured as he began to speak. "Over the past several weeks, the city has conducted a thorough investigation into the actions of Officer Bradley and his team during the incident involving Mrs. Clara Edwards and her granddaughter, Amara," he began. "The findings of this investigation are clear. Officer Bradley violated department protocols and used excessive force. His actions were unjustifiable and unacceptable." A murmur rippled through the crowd, and Amara glanced at Selena, her eyes wide. Selena gave her a reassuring nod. "As a result," the mayor continued, "Officer Bradley has been terminated from the police force, effective immediately. Additionally, the city will implement new training programs for our officers to ensure that incidents like this do not happen again." The room erupted into applause, but the mayor raised his hand for silence. "I also want to acknowledge the courage of Mrs. Edwards and Amara for coming forward and sharing their story. Their bravery has sparked important conversations in our community, and I am grateful for their resilience." The applause was louder this time, and Amara felt tears welling up in her eyes. She reached for Clara's hand, squeezing it tightly. When the mayor finished speaking, reporters swarmed around Selena, Alexis, and the Edwards family. Selena stepped forward, her voice cutting through the clamor. "Today's announcement is a step in the right direction," she said, "but this fight isn't over. We will continue to push for accountability and systemic change. What happened to Clara and Amara should never happen to anyone else. In the days that followed, the community's support only grew stronger. The bake sales turned into monthly events, with proceeds going toward not only Clara's medical bills, but also local organizations working to combat police misconduct. Clara's health, though still fragile, stabilized with better care. She began to accompany Amara to meetings and events, proud to see her granddaughter blossom into a young leader. One evening, as the family sat on their porch, enjoying the warm glow of the setting sun, Amara turned to Selena. "Do you think things will really change?" she asked. Selena smiled, her expression filled with pride and determination. "Change takes time, Amara. But with people like you leading the way, I believe it's possible." Amara nodded, her eyes reflecting the same determination. "Then we'll keep fighting." As the stars began to dot the sky, the little family sat together, bound by love, resilience, and an unwavering commitment to justice. They knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but they also knew they wouldn't be walking it alone. Together, they were unstoppable. A legacy of change. The weeks after the press conference were a blur of activity and cautious optimism. The city had not only terminated Officer Bradley, but had also committed to broader reforms, including body cameras for all officers and a new community review board to oversee cases of alleged misconduct. It wasn't everything Selena had hoped for, but it was a meaningful start, and proof that persistence could yield change. Clara and Amara returned to a semblance of normalcy, though their lives had forever been altered by the ordeal. The once quiet grandmother and granddaughter had become symbols of resilience in their community, and their story continued to inspire people far beyond their neighborhood. One evening, Selena arrived at Clara's home with an envelope in her hand. She knocked on the door, and Amara opened it with her usual bright smile. "Hi, Selena. Come in." Clara, seated in her favorite chair, greeted Selena warmly. "What brings you by so late, dear?" Selena held up the envelope. "I have something to show you both. It's from the mayor's office." Amara's eyes widened as she sat on the edge of the couch. "What is it?" Selena opened the envelope and pulled out an official letter. "It's an invitation. The city is holding a ceremony next week to honor individuals who've made a significant impact on the community. They want to recognize both of you." Clara's hand flew to her chest. "Oh my goodness. Us, but we didn't do anything special." Selena smiled warmly. "Clara, you stood up for what was right when it would have been easier to stay silent. And Amara, you've shown more courage and determination than most adults I know. You've both inspired people to fight for justice. That's more than special." Amara's face lit up with excitement. "Grandma, we have to go. This is so cool." Clara chuckled, her eyes misty with emotion. "Of course we'll go, sweetheart. It's not every day someone like me gets invited to something like this." The ceremony was held in the city's main civic hall, a grand building with towering columns and a marble staircase. Clara and Amara arrived with Selena, who had ensured they both looked their best. Amara wore her favorite dress, and Clara's new outfit, donated by a local shop, brought a sparkle to her tired eyes. The hall was filled with people from all walks of life: city officials, community leaders, and everyday citizens who had been moved by Clara and Amara's story. When their names were called, the audience erupted into applause as they walked to the stage. The mayor stood at the podium, a smile on his face. "Today, we honor two extraordinary individuals who remind us of the power of resilience, love, and the determination to make a difference. Clara Edwards and her granddaughter, Amara, have shown us that even in the face of injustice, we can choose to stand tall and fight for what's right. Their courage has sparked meaningful change in our city." As the mayor presented them with plaques, Clara leaned into the microphone, her voice steady despite her emotions. "I never thought I'd be here today. But this isn't about me. It's about all of us. It's about the community that came together to support us when we needed it most. And it's about making sure no one else has to go through what we did. Thank you for standing with us." The applause was deafening. Amara took the microphone next, her young voice filled with conviction. "I used to think I was just a kid, that my voice didn't matter. But now I know that anyone can make a difference if they're brave enough to try. Thank you for believing in us." In the months that followed, the reforms the city implemented began to take effect. The new Community Review Board ensured greater accountability, and body cameras became mandatory for all officers. Clara and Amara continued to advocate for change, attending meetings, speaking at events, and inspiring others to stand up for justice. Selena, ever the tireless advocate, took on more cases of police misconduct, using the momentum from Clara and Amara's story to push for broader reforms statewide. But she always made time to check in on the Edwards family, who had become like her own. One sunny afternoon, Clara, Amara, and Selena sat on the porch of Clara's home, enjoying a plate of fresh cookies Amara had baked. The neighborhood was alive with the laughter of children and the chatter of neighbors, a stark contrast to the tension that had once clouded their lives. "Do you ever think about how far we've come?" Amara asked, looking at her grandmother and Selena. Clara smiled, her hand resting on Amara's shoulder. "Every day, sweetheart. And I'm so proud of you for never giving up." Selena leaned back in her chair, a satisfied smile on her face. "You two are proof that change starts with ordinary people doing extraordinary things. The world is a better place because of you." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the sky in hues of gold and pink, the three of them sat together, bound by the trials they had faced and the triumphs they had achieved. The fight for justice was far from over, but they had laid the foundation for a brighter, fairer future. For Clara, Amara, and Selena, this wasn't just the end of a chapter, it was the beginning of a legacy that would inspire generations to come.